Lin Xiaoyue never thought that her life would change completely due to the eyes of a stranger. That night, she just got off work from the convenience store, wearing a somewhat faded blue uniform, carrying a bag of discounted bread she had just bought, and was walking on the way home with exhausted steps. The neon lights in the city were shining with the cold light, and the cars on the street were waving by, and no one would look at her more. She was ill-watched in this ignorant feeling. She was just an ordinary little person in this huge city. Her home is in a small alley in the old city. The narrow alley is filled with miscellaneous objects, and the air is always filled with a damp and musty smell. As the moon was low, I looked at the stone road under my feet, and my brain was still counting on the opening of the month. The debts at home were like a mountain, which made her breathless. Her father's illness, mother's trauma, and the endless amount of receipts made her feel like she was slamming in the quagmire every day. She didn't even dare to think about the future, but just passed by day after day mechanically. Just as she turned into the entrance of the alley, a black car stopped far away. The window was half open, revealing a man's face, with clear contours and an indescribable indifference between his eyebrows and eyes. Xiaoyue didn't care much, but this kind of luxury car looked out of place in this old-fashioned place. She thought it was just a passing road. But as she lowered her head and continued to walk, the car quickly followed, and the light of the car light pulled a long shadow behind her. "Hey, you!" A low voice came from the car, carrying unquestionable verbal spirit. Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, stopped and turned to look. The man walked off the car, wearing a black suit cut, slender figure, and was so strong that he was breathless. His eyes were staring at her, as if he had seen something incredible. Xiaoyue took a step back with a clue, and the plastic bag in her hand was squeezed into pieces. Are you? Her voice was a little terrifying, not because of fear, but because of the other party's strong attention, which made her feel uncomfortable. The man didn't answer, but just walked slowly, his eyes regaining her face, as if he was confirming something. Only then did Xiaoyue notice that in his eyes, in addition to indifference, there was also a feeling that she couldn't understand, as if it was shocked or as if it was a deep thought. Her heartbeat was inexplicably faster, and she had all kinds of misleading guesses in her brain. Can she think of it? Or did she accidentally offend someone? "What's your name?" The man's voice was low and calm, with a sense of pressure that could not be rejected. "Lin Xiaoyue." She hesitated for a moment and answered in a fair manner. After all, the other party didn't look like she would let her go. "Lin Xiaoyue." He repeated her name, as if chewing something, then an unknown smile came out from the corner of his mouth. "Go with me." "What?" Xiaoyue widened her eyes, thinking that this person was puzzled. "Why do I want to follow you? I don't know you at all." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he was a little impatient, but he still took out a business card from his suit pocket and sent it to her. When I looked down at the moon, I saw that the business card read Gu Chenfeng, Executive Director of the Guinness Group. The characters are simple and grand, and the paper is so thick that people know it is not simple as soon as they touch it. She was stunned for a moment, and her brain was flying fast. Guncher Group? Isn't that the most famous luxury enterprise in the city? Is this person in front of me really that kind of tall and arrogant person? I don't have time to explain to you. Gu Chenfeng's voice was still cold, as if he was disdainful of saying more. "I will not harm you, nor will I force you to do unwilling things. But I have a suggestion that can solve all your problems." Xiaoyue's hand holding the business card was shaking slightly. She was not a fool. Of course, she knew that there were most problems with such things as losing bread in the sky. But she also knew that her life was so bad that it could not be worse, including debt, father's medical expenses, and the old home. If there was a chance, even if it was only 1 in a million chance, she wanted to try it. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip and tried to ask. Gu Chenfeng didn't answer directly, but turned around and walked towards the car, and said, "I'll tell you when I get on the car." Xiaoyue stood there, hesitated for a few seconds, and finally grabbed the plastic bag in her hand and followed her with her stern. She didn't know why she heard this stranger, maybe because of his unquestionable aura, or maybe because she was so tired that she didn't even have the energy to refuse. The air in the car is very quiet, with only the light sound of the air conditioner. Xiaoyue sat in the back seat and secretly glanced at the side of the wind. He leaned against the back of the chair and closed his eyes, as if he didn't take her seriously at all. But she could feel that his presence was so strong that it was impossible to ignore it. The car opened for about half an hour and parked at the underground warehouse of a high-end apartment. Only then did I realize that I seemed to have really followed a stranger to a completely unfamiliar place. Get off. Gu Chenfeng took the lead in promoting the door, and his language was still imperative. Xiaoyue gritted her teeth and followed. The elevator reaches the top floor, and as soon as the door opens, what catches your eye is a spacious living room. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window is the night view of the entire city. The light of the neon lights is like a galaxy. She had never seen such a house, which was as luxurious as a scene in a movie, which made her feel a little at a loss. Sit. Gu Chenfeng pointed to the shafu, and stood by the window, facing her back, as if she didn't worry about her running away. Xiaoyue sat down carefully, holding the bag of bread in her hand, which looked a little funny. She plucked up her courage and asked, "What do you want to fuck? If you just want to fool me, I don't have time to play with you." Gu Chenfeng turned over and his eyes fell on her face again. This time, he finally explained, "I need you, help me do something." "What's the matter?" Xiaoyue raised her eyebrows, believing that things were not that simple. He was silent for a few seconds, as if he was thinking about it, and then he said something that shocked Xiaoyue. "I want you, pretend to be someone." Pretended? Xiaoyue was stunned, her brain blank. Who is pretending? Why is it me? Gu Chenfeng did not answer directly, but took out a photo from her pocket and put it on the coffee table in front of her. When I looked down at the moon, I saw that there was a young woman in the photo, smiling softly and brightly, and her facial features were as delicate as a painting person. But what shocked her even more was that the face was actually 70 to 80% similar to her own face. Her name is Su Zhiqing. Gu Chenfeng's voice was low and slow, as if suppressing a certain emotion. She used to be the most important person in my life, but she is no longer here. I need you to replace her and be with me. Xiaoyue was stunned when she heard it, and her brain seemed to be struck by lightning. She pointed to the photo, her fingers trembling. What do you mean? Let me be a substitute. That's ridiculous. Not a substitute. Gu Chenfeng's eyes turned cold, and his temperament was unusually determined. It's a contract. If you help me complete this, I will give you a fortune to solve all your problems. The house, debt, your father's illness. I can help you. After a slight breathing of Xiaoyue, these words seemed to hit her soft ribs directly. She really needs money, so desperate that she can ignore everything. But as a substitute, it sounds like a bloody drama in a movie. How could it really happen to her? What do I trust you? She gritted her teeth and tried to make herself look less wolves. Were you just cheating me? Gu Chenfeng sneered, as if he had heard some ridiculous question. Gu Chenfeng, don't even cheat an ordinary person. You can go back and consider it and answer it in 3 days. If you agree, this contract will be officially certified by a lawyer to ensure your interests. Xiaoyue held the photo and tightened her hand slightly. She looked at the woman named Su Zhiqing in the photo, and her brain was in a mess. She didn't know why this man chose her, nor did she know what secrets were hidden behind this contract. But she clearly realized that her life had begun to deviate from the original road because of the encounter tonight. In the next 3 days, I almost didn't sleep well for a month. She looked at the business card repeatedly, her brain was full of Gu Chenfeng's cold face and Su Zhiqing's smile in the photo. She even secretly searched the internet for the name of Gu Chenfeng, and found that he was real, the inheritor of the Guinness Group, the new business community. The news was cold and ruthless, and never got involved in the flirting. Regarding Su Zhiqing, there is no information on the internet, as if it has been deliberately erased. She also went to the hospital and saw her father lying on the hospital bed. My father's face was pale and his body was covered with tubes. The doctor said that if he did not have surgery, he might not be able to get rid of it for half a year. Gu stood outside the ward, looking at him through the glass, her eyes falling down uncontrollably. She knew she had no choice. 3 days later, she called the phone on her business card, and her voice was so low that she could hardly hear, "I agree." At the end of the phone, Chenfeng's voice was as cold as ever, "Okay, come to our company tomorrow and sign a contract." The moment I closed my phone, Xiaoyue looked at the gray sky outside the window, and her heart was empty. She didn't know what her days would turn into in the next time, nor did she know what kind of purity this man named Chenfeng would lead her to. But the only thing she was sure of was that from this moment on, she was no longer just Lin Xiaoyue, but the shadow of another woman. On the day of the signing, Xiaoyue was wearing the white shirt on her body. Although the cuffs were a little worn, it at least looked less shabby. The building of the Gunch Group is so high that people can't even see it when they are tilted. The glass curtain wall flashes cold light under the sun, like the coldest symbol of this city. She stood in the building, looking out of place until an assistant dressed in a professional dress walked over and took her to the top office. Jane Chenfeng sat behind the huge desk, wearing a dark gray suit, and his eyebrows were still the indifference that kept people from thousands of miles away. He didn't say much, but just pushed a thick document. "After reading it, I'll sign it without any questions." After the document was opened, it was filled with terms and conditions, such as no initiative to disclose the content of the contract, must adjust the image according to Party A's requirements, the contract period is 1 year. She was so impressed, but she still finished reading it with a stern look, and then signed her name on the last page. "From today on, you are Su Zhiqing." After receiving the document, Gu Chenfeng's speech was calm as if he was talking about something ordinary. "Your clothes, hair, and even the temperament you speak must be like her. I will arrange someone to teach you. As the moonlight comes, I feel like a stone is pressing down in my heart." She didn't know if she could do it, nor did she know what kind of person this Su Zhiqing was. But when she saw the first money that came out of the bank card, the heavy pressure finally solved a little. She told herself that it was just a deal, and she could take it away after a year. But what she didn't expect was that Gu Chenfeng's requirements for Superman were far more demanding than she thought. From the next day, she was sent to a private styling studio where designers cut her hair, changed her clothes, and even taught her how to walk and laugh. She looked at herself in the mirror, as strange as another person, but Chenfeng just stood aside coldly, with a flash of satisfaction in her eyes. "It's a little bit far away," he said softly, as if he was talking to himself, "but it's very similar." When Xiaoyue heard this, her heart felt inexplicably sad. She knew that the like in his eyes was not an affirmation of her, but a thought of another person. She suddenly had a kind of impulse and wanted to ask him what kind of person Su Zhiqing was and why she could make him so far. But when she reached her mouth, she still swallowed it because she knew that she was just a substitute and had no qualifications to ask about it. In the following days, Xiaoyue began to appear on the body of Gu Chenfeng as Su Zhiqing. She accompanied him to various drinks, wearing expensive gift clothes, holding his arm, and smiling softly and tidy. Those in the wealthy circle looked at her with some inquiry and disdain, but Chenfeng never understood it, but just used a protective attitude to put her behind her. Once, after the drinks, Jiu sat in the car, stripped off his high heels and rubbed his sore ankles. She couldn't help asking, "Why did you bring me to these places?" "Just to let others look at me, like her?" Gu Chenfeng's hand holding the steering wheel tightened slightly, and his eyes didn't look at her, but said lightly, "You don't need to know some things." Xiaoyue bit her lip, and a feeling of indescribable grievance fell in her heart. She knew she shouldn't ask too much, but every time she saw his indifferent face, she couldn't help but wonder, who did he call me? Is it Su Zhiqing, or just a tool? Just when she thought this life would continue, the appearance of a man broke the silence of this film. That night, Gu Chenfeng took her to a high-end restaurant and said she wanted to meet a friend. Xiaoyue was wearing a long blue dress with her hair tied into the way Su Zhiqing liked, and followed him softly and gently. In the restaurant, a man in a casual suit was leaning on a chair, smiling casually and furiously. When he saw Gu Chenfeng, Lima stood up and patted his shoulder. "Yi, Chenfeng, I always showed up. I thought you were going to hide from me again." Gu Chenfeng snorted coldly, but did not answer, but just pulled open the chair and let Xiaoyue sit down. The man noticed her only then, and there was a flash of surprise in his eyes, and then he smiled even more. Is this Zhiqing? No, you are not. Xiaoyue, close your mouth. Gu Chenfeng's voice was low and warned, his eyes as cold as if it could contain people. Xiaoyue sniffed at her shoulders and sat back in her position. Although she didn't say anything on her mouth, her eyes kept striking on Xiaoyue, as if she had seen through something. Xiaoyue lowered her head, clenched the tablecloth with her fingers, and felt a little uneasy inexplicably. She didn't know who Xiaoyue was, nor did she know why he mentioned Su Zhiqing, but she could feel that this person seemed to know a lot of things she shouldn't know. The atmosphere in the air was a bit awkward. Chenfeng almost didn't say anything. Xiaoyue was very talkative and made a few jokes at any time, but Xiaoyue always felt that there was a different meaning in his smile. Until the end of the game, Xiaoyue suddenly approached her and said in a low voice, "Little girl, don't be too serious. This game is not that simple." Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment and looked up at him, but Xiaoyue had already stood up and slapped his hand at Gu Chenfeng. "I have something to do, let's go first. You can chat slowly." Gu Chenfeng's face became even colder, and there was a flash of flickering in his eyes, but he didn't say anything, but just turned his head and looked at Xiaoyue. "Let's go." At the beginning of the month, he followed him to leave the restaurant. But Xiaoyue's words were like a thorn, piercing into her heart. She began to doubt that this contract was really just as simple as it seemed on the surface. The past of Chenfeng, Su Zhiqing's death, and Xiaoyue's attitude, all of this seemed to have secrets that she could not touch. The car drove in the night, and the moon looked at the passing lights outside the window, and the heart was in a mess. She knew that she could not turn around, but she also wondered that the game had just begun. The car drove slowly in the night, and the moon leaned against the window, looking at the street view passing outside empty. The neon lights flashed and darkened on her face, reflecting a touch of fatigue that could not be hidden between her eyebrows. Xiaoyue's words, "Don't be too serious, this game is not that simple," are like a stone, pressing her heart, making her unable to get rid of it. She glanced at the wind of the car driving beside her. He was still the cold look, and his face seemed to be carved without any emotional fluctuations. She lit her mouth and wanted to ask something, but she swallowed it back until she was around her mouth. She knew that even if he asked, he wouldn't say it. The car finally stopped under the familiar high-profile apartment building. Xiaoyue followed Gu Chenfeng into the elevator, and there was an indescribable pressure in the air. The moment the elevator door opened, she suddenly felt like she was trapped in a slim prison, and even her breathing was a little difficult. "Go in." Gu Chenfeng pushed open the door of the apartment. His temperament was as plain as ever, as if he hadn't noticed her strangeness at all. As the moonlight was about to start, I took off my high heels and stepped on the icy marble floor. She looked down at the tip of her feet, and suddenly she felt that she was out of place. This expensive skirt, this luxurious house, and even the way she held her hair, were not from Lin Xiaoyue, but from another woman. "Just say anything." Gu Chenfeng took off his jacket, put his hands on the sofa, turned his head to look at her, with a burst of impatient look in his eyes. Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect that he would take the initiative to open his mouth. She bit her lip and plucked up her courage and asked, "Why did Xiaoyue just now? Why did he know Su Zhiqing? What does the game he mean?" Gu Chenfeng's eyes instantly turned cold, as if they were touched with some taboos. He didn't answer, but walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at her, his voice as low as if it was coming out of his throat. "These things have nothing to do with you. Remember your identity, don't ask." Xiaoyue's heart tightened and her fingers clenched the corners of her skirt unconsciously. She knew she shouldn't talk too much, but the feeling of being kept in the dark actually made her feel like she was about to suffocate. She took a deep breath and tried to make her voice sound calmer. "I just want to know what kind of role I'm playing. If I don't know, how can I play it well?" Gu Chenfeng was silent for a few seconds, and finally turned around, staring at her with her eyes as if she could see through her heart. "You don't need to know too much. As I say, learn her like her and her genius, and that's all. As the moon is low, my head is silent, and my heart seems to be blocked by something." She suddenly realized that she was not only Su Zhiqing's substitute, but also a tool for a certain kind of thought in Gu Chenfeng's heart. She didn't even know whether he had really seen her Lin Xiaoyue, rather than the woman who had long been gone. That night, Xiaoyue lay in the guest room prepared for her in the apartment, and she couldn't sleep on the opposite side. There's a photo of Su Zhiqing on the bedside table, which is the reference data given to her by Gu Chenfeng. The woman in the photo smiles softly and brightly, as if she can melt everything cold. But when Xiaoyue looked at that face, she felt cold in her heart. She knew that she would never be the person in the photo, but she knew that she had to force herself to become her. In the next few days, Xiaoyue's life seemed to be pressed down in repeated keys. Every morning, she was arranged to learn Su Zhiqing's habits. She liked to drink coffee, perfume, and even imitated her writing. Gu Chenfeng found a personal assistant named Sister Lin, who was responsible for renovating her. Sister Lin is a woman in her 40s. When she speaks and acts in a slight manner, she always looks at Xiaoyue with a scrutiny look, as if she is never satisfied with her performance. If you relax your shoulders, Miss Zhiqing will never be so stiff. Sister Lin was lying on Xiaoyue's standing posture and browsed, and with your smile, don't be so arrogant. When she smiles, she always has a little shyness. You have to practice again. Xiaoyue gritted her teeth and practiced repeatedly while the lens was still smiling sorely on her face. She knew that she was not doing well, but she couldn't help but wonder, if Su Zhiqing was really that perfect, why would Jason Chenfeng find a substitute? Could it be that the one in his heart has been beautified into a phantom that does not exist at all? Just when Xiaoyue thought that this kind of days would continue endlessly, an unexpected invitation broke her peace. That evening, Gu Chenfeng suddenly told her that she would take her to a private party tonight, saying that it was a dinner for several old friends, and asked her to appear as Su Zhiqing. Xiaoyue felt nervous. Although she had become accustomed to playing, she still felt like she was walking on a steel wire every time she appeared in front of a stranger. If she was not careful, she would show her vagina. The gathering is a private venue hidden in the alley in the city center. The decoration is low-key and luxurious, and there are several cars parked at the door that are worth a lot of money. Xiaoyue was wearing a beige dress, her hair was tied into a loose low bun, and she was wearing a light makeup, making herself look as gentle as Su Zhiqing. Jade Chenfeng walked beside her, wearing a black shirt, with slightly rolled up her cuffs, revealing a solid forearm, and her aura was so strong that people dared not look directly. After entering the parcel, there were already 5 or 6 people sitting in it, including men and women, and their clothes were full of unintentional pride. When they saw Gu Chenfeng, they stood up and greeted him, and their eyes fell on Xiaoyue at once, carrying a few explorations and surprises. Chenfeng, this is... A man in a wine-red suit spoke first, with a silk quiz hidden in his language. Jane Chenfeng didn't answer directly, but just pulled open the chair and let Xiaoyue sit down, and said lightly, her name is Zhiqing. As soon as this sentence came out, the air inside the enclosure seemed to freeze in an instant. Xiaoyue could feel that everyone's eyes were focused on her, some of shock, some of them were suspicious, and even some of them were disdainful. She lowered her head, clenched the tablecloth with her fingers, her heart beat as fast as if she was about to jump out of her chest. She knew that these people must have known the real Su Zhiqing, and her fake cart might be exposed at any time. Zhiqing? A woman wearing a black hanging skirt smiled lightly, with a clear mockery in her language. Chenfeng, are you joking a little too much, right? Zhiqing. Close your mouth. Gu Chenfeng's voice was low and cold, his eyes swept over the woman, and he brought an unquestionable warning. Who did she mean, who is she? The woman was stunned for a moment. Although she was unwilling to give up, she still closed her mouth. The atmosphere in the wrapping room became even more awkward. Xiaoyue sat next to Chenfeng, as if she was being roasted on the fire. She knew that these people didn't say anything, but they were guessing her identity in their hearts, and they might have even seen through that she was just a substitute. During the whole party, I almost didn't say anything for a month, just ate the food and the plate with my head low, and occasionally I had to deal with a few questions from others. It was natural for Gu Chenfeng to care about other people's gaze at all, and she would always pick up food for her, and she practiced her movements as if they had really met her for many years. But Xiaoyue could feel that when his finger touched her plate, he would always turn slightly, as if he was looking at another person through her. After the gathering, Xiaoyue followed the wind of the palace and opened the venue. The night wind blew on her face, with a hint of turmoil, which made her nervous nerves relax a little. She couldn't help asking, "Why did you take me to this place? They all know that I'm not her." Gu Chenfeng stopped and looked at her, with a complicated feeling flashing in his eyes. "Some things I need them to believe. You just need to do your own thing and ignore the others." Xiaoyue felt a soreness in her heart, and she lowered her head and didn't say anything more. She knew that what he said was do your own thing, but that she continued to play the role of Su Zhiqing well. But she became more and more aware that this kind of performance was not only a scammer of others, but also a scammer of himself. After returning to the apartment, Xiaoyue sat alone on the sofa in the living room, holding his knees and dazed. Gu Chenfeng went to the bookstore, as if she was handling business. She was the only one in the huge house, which looked particularly empty. She suddenly felt like she was trapped in a huge prison, without even the strength to slap. At this moment, the phone suddenly started to rise. It was a strange number. Xiaoyue's watch hesitated for a moment, and then he picked it up. A familiar voice came from the phone. "Lin Xiaoyue, right? I'm Zhou. Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, and quickly recalled the man who was smiling in the restaurant. She raised her eyebrows, with a little vigilance in her voice. "How do you know my number? What's the matter with me?" Zhou smiled lightly. His temperament was as relaxed as an old friend chatting. "Don't be nervous, I just want to talk to you." The guy named Chenfeng was so stubborn as if he was a stone head, but I could see that you were not relaxed by him. Xiaoyue's hand holding the phone tightened slightly, and a feeling that could not be expressed in her heart. She knew she shouldn't say much to this person, but Zhou temperament made her feel a little sensible, as if someone finally saw through her dress. "What the hell do you want to say?" She bit her lip and tried to make her voice sound colder. Zhou was silent for a few seconds, and suddenly became serious. "I just want to remind you that there are too many things hidden in his heart by Gu Chenfeng. His thoughts about Su Zhiqing are not something you can imagine. You are getting too close to him now, so be careful to get yourself in." Xiaoyue's heart was shocked and her fingers clenched her phone unconsciously. She knew that Zhou said it was right, but she also knew that she had no way out. She said in a low voice, "Thank you for your reminder, but I have my reasons and I can't turn it back." At the phone, Zhou sighed, as if he was helpless. "Okay, since you said this, I won't be able to do it anymore. But remember, if you can't stop one day, you can come to me anytime. I don't like to see the little girl being too disgusted by him." After closing the phone, Xiaoyue sat on the sand and formed a group of her brains. Zhou words were like a knife, piercing into the most vulnerable part of her heart. She knew that the relationship between her and Gu Chenfeng was a transaction from the beginning, but why did her heart still hurt because of his indifference? At this moment, the door of the book room suddenly opened and Gu Chenfeng walked out. He was wearing a white shirt, his mouth was slightly open, and his eyebrows were tired. He saw Xiaoyue sitting on the sofa. He was stunned for a moment, and then asked, "Why haven't you been sleeping yet?" Xiaoyue raised her head and looked at his eyes, and a sudden sensation in her heart. She stood up and plucked up her courage and asked, "Gu Chenfeng, what do you think of me as? Is it Su Zhiqing's substitute, or something else?" Chenfeng's eyes were all set, as if she hadn't expected her to ask such a problem. He was silent for a few seconds, his voice low and cold. "You don't need to know these. Remember your identity and that's all." Xiaoyue bit her lip, and her eyes suddenly felt a little hot. She knew she shouldn't expect anything, but his words were still like a knife, piercing her heart hard. She turned her back to him, and said in a low voice, "I get it." Wei Chenfeng didn't say anything anymore, but just stood there, looking at her back, with a complex emotion flashing in her eyes. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he still said nothing. He turned back to the book room. Xiaoyue, a person, stood in the living room, listening to the sound of the door of the book room, and his heart was empty-minded. She suddenly realized that she had not only lost her original life in this contract, but even her heart began to be uncontrollably calm. In the next few days, the atmosphere between the moon and the wind of the city became even more dissatisfied. They were like two strangers, living under the same house, barely speaking. Xiaoyue continued to play the role of Su Zhiqing and accompanied him to various parties, but every time she saw him looking at her, she felt as if she was looking at another person. Until one day, Gu Chenfeng suddenly took her to a strange place. It was a villa located in the suburbs, hidden in a forest, looking particularly peaceful. Xiaoyue followed him off the car, feeling a little uneasy because the place didn't look like the place he would usually go. "Where's this place?" she couldn't help asking. Gu Chenfeng didn't answer, but just pushed open the door of the villa and took her in. The decoration inside is very simple, with a warm atmosphere, with a few pictures hanging on the wall and some old photos on the table. Xiaoyue realized at a glance that the person in the photo was Su Zhiqing. "This is where she used to live." Gu Chenfeng's voice was low and slow, as if suppressing a certain emotion. "I brought you here to make you understand her better." Xiaoyue felt nervous and looked at the photos, and her brain became a group. She suddenly realized that Gu Chenfeng's thoughts about Su Zhiqing were far deeper than she had imagined. And what is she herself in this game? She turned her head and looked at Gu Chenfeng, trying to find an answer from his face, but his eyes were still as cold as a pool of stagnant water. She knew that this contract was not as simple as it seemed on the surface, and the story between her and Gu Chenfeng just kicked off. Xiaoyue stood in the living room of the villa in the suburbs, and a faint old breath filled the air, as if time had been frozen here. In the photos on the wall, Su Zhiqing smiled softly and brightly, her eyes as clear as if she could see through people's hearts. Xiaoyue's fingers clenched the corners of her clothes unconsciously, and her heart seemed to be blocked by something, and she couldn't breathe. She glanced at the Feng Chenfeng beside her. His face was as cold as ever, but his eyes remained on those photos and had not moved for a long time. That focused expression made Xiaoyue feel like a multitude of intruders, standing here. Even her breathing was abrupt. She used to like paintings. Gu Chenfeng suddenly opened his mouth, his voice as low as he was talking to himself. "These paintings were all left by her." Xiaoyue looked over with his eyes, and there were a few unfinished sketches on the painting stand at the corner of the wall, and the lines were simply filled with the living, as if you could feel the mood of the painter. She clicked the head, but didn't say anything, because she didn't know what to say. She could feel that Gu Chenfeng brought her here not to let her know Su Zhiqing better, but to immerse herself in some kind of memory. And she is just a prop to accompany her. "Do you know?" Gu Chenfeng turned over, staring at her with a look of her eyes, carrying a feeling that she couldn't understand. "The day she left, the weather was very good and the sun was very warm, but I felt that the whole world had collapsed." Xiaoyue was shocked and heard the first time he took the initiative to mention Su Zhiqing's past. She lit her mouth and wanted to ask something, but she swallowed it back until she was around her mouth. She knew that no matter what she said, she could not touch the forbidden area in his heart. So, she just said in a low voice, "I'm sorry." Kazuki-san sneered, as if he heard something ridiculous. "You don't need to say sorry. You are not her, and you will never be her." This sentence is like a knife, stabbing into Xiaoyue's heart fiercely. She bit her lip, forcing herself not to let her eyes fall, but the soreness in her heart could not be suppressed. She suddenly realized that no matter how hard she tried to imitate Su Zhiqing, whether she was wearing her clothes, learning her temperament, and even laughing like her, in Gu Chenfeng's eyes, she was always just a shadow, a substitute that could never be replaced. After returning to the apartment that day, Xiaoyue sat alone on the bed in the guest room, holding her knees and dazed. Her brain was full of the words that Gu Chenfeng said in the villa, like a spell, repeatedly resonating in her ears. She knew that she had already been experiencing this feeling, but why did her heart still feel so painful, as if it was torn apart? She picked up her cell phone, turned to Zhou Yiran's number, and hesitated for a long time, but still gave up. "Hey, what's the month?" Zhou Yiran's voice still had a few relaxed smiles at the end of the phone. "Why did you finally figure it out and ask me for help?" Xiaoyue bit her lip, her voice so low that she could hardly hear. "Zhou Yiran, can you tell me what kind of person Su Zhiqing is? Why did Gu Chenfeng take this to her? After the phone was silent for a few seconds, Xiaoyue sighed and said a little more serious in her speech, "Sia, there are some things that I don't want to say, but that they are not good for you. Zhiqing. She is a very good person, gentle and kind, as if she can illuminate others. But the matter between her and Chenfeng is too complicated and involves a lot of past you don't know. If you are asking these now, it will only make yourself more difficult." Xiaoye's hand holding the phone tightened slightly, and a feeling of powerlessness that could not be described in her heart. She said in a low voice, "I just want to know what I am in his heart. If I'm always just a stand-in, what am I still here to fuck?" Xiaoyue was silent for a few seconds, and his voice fell down. "Sia, I can only tell you that Chenfeng is not able to unravel the heart of a person like Chenfeng. His thoughts of Zhiqing have become a part of him. But I can see that he has no feelings for you. Think about it yourself, is it worth it to force yourself to this point for him?" After closing the phone, Xiaoye sat on the bed and formed a group of her brains. Xiaoyuan's words were like a mirror, illuminating the fact that she didn't want to face the most in her heart. She knew that her feelings for Gu Chenfeng had long exceeded the scope of the contract, but she also knew that this relationship was a mistake from the beginning. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if she had made up some decision. The next morning, Xiaoyu found Gu Chenfeng and plucked up his courage and said, "I want to end this contract." Gu Chenfeng was reading the documents in the book room. When he heard this, he put a pen in his hand. He raised his head, his eyes as cold as ice. "What are you talking about?" Xiaoyu gritted her teeth and forced herself to look straight into his eyes. "I said, I don't want to be a substitute anymore. This contract, for me, has no intention. I want to go back to my life." The face of Chenfeng's face suddenly sank, and there was an indescribable sense of pressure in the air. He stood up and walked to her, his voice low and dangerous. "Lin Xiaoyue, do you think this is a game? You can play whenever you want, and you can leave whenever you want?" Xiaoyu felt nervous, but she still said with a hard head, "I didn't treat it as a game. But I don't want to continue to cheat myself anymore. What you need is not me, but Su Zhiqing's shadow. And I will never be her." Chenfeng's eyes flashed, as if he was stabbed by something. He was silent for a few seconds, and suddenly sneered, "Okay, since you want to leave, I won't swear you. But remember, don't regret it when you leave." Xiaoye didn't say anything anymore, but turned back to the guest room and started to pack up his own things. In fact, she had nothing to clean up. Those expensive clothes and headgears were all prepared by Gu Chenfeng for Su Zhiqing, and none of them belonged to her. She only took the old backpack she brought when she first came, with a few pieces of changing clothes and a bank card in it, and the money she had spent during this time. "The moment I left the apartment, Jiyu stood in the elevator, watching the numbers beating down, and my heart was empty." She thought she would feel relieved, but in fact, that feeling of emptiness was stronger than ever. She knew that she had not only left the house, but also left a relationship that she knew she should not start. Back in the alleys of the old city, I opened my home every month, and the familiar moist and musty smell came towards me. My mother was busy working in the kitchen. When she saw her coming back, she was stunned at first, then she asked with her eyebrows, "Where have you been going in the past few months? Why did you suddenly come back?" Xiaoyue smiled and wrote a reason, "I'm back when my work is over." "What's the case for Dad?" The mother sighed and shook her head, "It's still the same thing. The doctor said that if you don't have surgery, you really have no hope." "But where do we get the money?" Xiaoye felt a soreness in her heart, and she was still not talking. She knew that although she had taken the money given by Gu Chenfeng, those who had already been used to pay for the previous medical fees, and the rest were not enough. She sat by the bed, looking at the dusty sky outside the window, and suddenly felt like she was trapped in a quagmire that she could never get out of. At this moment, the phone suddenly started to rise. It was a strange number. Xiaoye's watch hesitated for a moment, and then he picked it up. A low and familiar voice came from the phone, "Lin Xiaoyue, I am Gu Chenfeng." Xiaoye was stunned for a moment, and her heartbeat inexplicably accelerated. She bit her lip, and there was a little coldness in her voice. Is there anything wrong? I thought we've already explained it. Gu Chenfeng was silent for a few seconds. His voice was as low as if it was suppressing something. I just wanted to ask, are you doing well? Xiaoyue was shocked, but he didn't expect that he would ask such a question. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but the words turned into a sentence. I'm fine, you don't have to worry about it. There was a silence on the phone again, and then Guanfeng said in a low voice, if you have any needs, you can find me anytime. I didn't reply again, but just stopped the phone. She sat on the bed, her fingers clenched her cell phone, and her eyes suddenly felt a little hot. She knew that this call from Gu Chenfeng might be the biggest step he could make, but she also knew that she could not turn around. In the next few days, Xiaoyue tried to find a new job, but her academic and experience were limited, and the simplicity she threw out was like a rock sinking into the sea, without even a single echo. She began to wonder whether it was a wrong decision to leave Chenfeng. Just when Xiaoyue was about to give up, Zhou Yiran suddenly contacted her. He asked her to meet in a small coffee shop. When he met, he was always smiling, holding a cup of black coffee in his hand, leaning on the chair casually. It doesn't look very good. Zhou Yiran looked at her, talking a few points in her voice. Why, I'm so mixed when I leave the Chenfeng. Xiaoyue glared at him with no gaze. Are you fucking me? If you come to laugh at me, I won't be in the mood to accompany you. Zhou Yiran sniffed his shoulders, put away his joking expression, and said seriously, I heard that you have left, so I want to help you. I have a friend who has opened a company and lacks an administrative assistant. The salary is not high, but at least it will allow you to stand firm first. Are you interested? Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect that he would raise such a thing. She hesitated for a few seconds, and still pointed, thank you, I really need a job. Zhou Yiran smiled, as if he relaxed his voice, okay, then I'll help you arrange it. But I have to remind you that Chenfeng, even though he doesn't say it, I can see that his condition is not right for the past few days. If you leave, you will be very bad at him. Xiaoyue's heart tightened and her fingers tightened the coffee cup. She lowered her head and said in a low voice, that's his own business, it has nothing to do with me. Zhou Yiran raised her eyebrows and said nothing more, but just gave her the contact method of work. When leaving the coffee shop, Xiaoyue looked at the crowds coming from the streets, and felt a lot of trouble in her heart. She knew that the story between her and Gu Chenfeng should end here, but why did she still feel ache in her heart? Several months have passed, and Xiaoyue is gradually adapting to the new company. Although her work is complicated and her salary is not high, at least she feels that she is still Lin Xiaoyue, not who is. She began to learn to replan her life, and even took a night school to improve herself. Although her father's surgery fee is still a big problem, she told herself that as long as she works hard, there will be a way. Just when she thought life was about to get to the right track, an unexpected news broke her peace. That night, when she got home from get off work, she suddenly received a message from her mobile phone, from a strange number, with only a simple sentence, what happened to Gu Chenfeng, come to the hospital. Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, and her brain was blank. Her first reaction was that she didn't believe it, but her fingers still trembled and yelled Zhou Yiran's phone. After the phone was connected, Zhou Yiran's voice was unusually low. Xiaoyue, it's true. Chenfeng is in the city center hospital now, and the situation is not very good. Xiaoyue's heart was shocked, as if she was hit hard by something. Without thinking too much, she grabbed her coat and ran out of the door. The taxi was flying in the night. She sat in the back seat, her fingers clenched her cell phone, and her heartbeat was as fast as if she was about to jump out of her chest. She told herself that she just went to check it out and confirm that he was fine, and then left. But the panic deep in my heart couldn't be suppressed. When he arrived at the hospital, Xiaoyue saw Zhou Yiran at the door of the emergency room. He leaned against the wall, his face pale and his eyes were filled with fatigue. Seeing her coming, he reluctantly smiled, "You're still here. What's going on with him?" Xiaoyue said with a terrible voice, and even he didn't even realize how tight he was. Zhou Yiran sighed and shook his head, "I'm still trying to save me. The doctor said he was not happy." He has been in a bad state for the past few months. He often stayed up late and was absent-minded when he started the car. I've said a long time ago that he looks cold on the surface, but in fact he's more fragile than anyone else in his heart. Xiaoyue bit her lip and her eyes suddenly became red. She stood at the door of the emergency room, looking at the busy medical staff inside. Her brain was full of Gu Chenfeng's faces, that cold face, the deep eyes, and the words he said in the villa, "You will never be her." She suddenly realized that she thought she had let go, but in fact, she had never really forgotten him. After a few hours, the doctor finally walked out, took off his mask, and said heavily, the patient was temporarily out of life, but was still in a coma. The continued recovery depends on his willpower. When Xiaoyue heard this, she felt as if all the strength in her body was exhausted and she slid on the ground against the wall. Zhou Ran squatted beside her and said in a low voice, "Xia, I know you have your own life, but Chenfeng, he really needs you. Can you give him an opportunity and yourself an opportunity?" Xiaoyue didn't say anything, just looked down at her hands, her eyes slamming on the floor. She knew that Zhou Ran said it was right, but she also knew that between her and Gu Chenfeng, there were not only the shadow of Su Zhiqing, but also the pain that was unclear. A few days later, Gu Chenfeng finally woke up. Xiaoyue stood at the door of the ward, looking at his white face and his swaying body. His heart seemed to be grabbed by something. He saw her, and then he was surprised in his eyes, and then he said in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Xiaoyue bit her lip and forced herself to smile. "I heard that something happened to you, come and see." "Are you, got a little better?" Chenfeng didn't answer, but just looked into her eyes, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she still didn't say anything. Xiaoyue stood there, and there was an indescribable embarrassment in the air. She knew that she shouldn't stay, but her steps seemed to be trapped and could not open no matter how hard she was. "Jingyue." Gu Chenfeng suddenly opened his mouth, his voice deep and deep, "I'm sorry." Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect that he would say these 3 words. She lit her mouth and wanted to say something, but her eyes fell off first. She turned over, turned her back to him, and said in a low voice, "You have a good rest, I'll leave first." The moment he left the ward, Xiaoyue leaned against the corridor wall and took a deep breath. She knew that this sentence "I'm sorry" might be the biggest step that Gu Chenfeng could give her, but she also knew that some injuries had long been so deep that it could not fit. She wiped her eyes off and told herself that she would learn to move forward no matter what. After a few months, Xiaoyue's life gradually returned to peace. She continued to work in the company and occasionally went to night school to study. Although her life was hard, it was at least her own. After being discharged from the hospital, Gu Chenfeng never contacted her again, as if she had really let go. And she also tried to let herself forget the past and the man who once made her heart moved and heartbroken. One evening, after get off work, I passed by a bookstore and accidentally saw a book in the window. She stopped and found that the cover of the painting was a sketch, with simple lines filled with life, like those pictures left by Su Zhiqing in the villa. She hesitated for a moment, walked in, flipped through the painting, and found that there were all Su Zhiqing's works, and there was a passage of text next to each painting, like a diary, recording her mood. Xiaoyue turned to the last page, which read, "If one day I am gone, I hope you can find the happiness that truly belongs to you. Chenfeng, don't live in the past." Xiaoyue was stunned for a moment, and a feeling that could not be expressed in her heart. She suddenly realized that Su Zhiqing never thought of becoming the shackle in Gu Chenfeng's heart, and she herself never really understood this woman. She closed the book and stood in the bookstore, her brain full of Gu Chenfeng's faces. That night, Xiaoyue returned home and sat by the window in a daze. She knew that the story between herself and Gu Chenfeng had already drawn the first sentence, but why did she still think of his eyes and the words "I'm sorry" in his voice at some moments? The night outside the window was deeper, and the neon lights of the city were flashing as cold as ever. Xiaoyue leaned against the window frame and closed her eyes, as if she had finally made up her mind. No matter what happens in the future, she has to learn and live for herself.